Yeah, I agree. Take a look. Let's take a look at the schedule here and see what we've got happening for the rest of the day. So that was just match one, but we only have we only have 4 matches on a Friday. We like to take it easy on a Friday.
Imagine taking it easy in Europe, Raven. Come on.
No, for us. We have different
okay.
standards, right? Obviously.
Okay.
We have Zhym versus RDU coming up next for our match number 2, and then later on we have Silvername versus Bunny Hopper, and Ball Control versus Alkane. So Zhym versus RDU is going to be an interesting one because again, both players bringing slightly different lineups. You see Hunter and Warlock, Zhym, whereas RDU going for Rogue and Priest. So whether you like the meta or not, whether you like the nerfs or buffs or whatever or not, you've got to admit we're seeing a lot of classes week in week out of week out of Grandmasters. There we are, trying to say a sentence. So even if it's you don't like particular decks or anything right now, the variety is definitely there in the game at this moment in time.
Yeah, so this series is going to see potentially our debut, or now that the bans are in, it is definitely going to see our debut of Quest Warlock and of Galakron Priest for the week. Quest Warlock is an extremely interesting deck, super fun deck, deck that I'm happy to see in the metagame because I do think it is pretty sweet, and I do think it is a very skill-intensive deck as well. In the games where the deck doesn't just hand a free win to you, which does happen sometimes, I think it would be slightly disingenuous to not call that out, but also Zhym as a player has seemed to like these kind of draw-heavy, combo-heavy decks because he was relying on the OTK Demon Hunter for a couple of weeks longer than anyone else really that we saw in GM. So now I guess there's no great surprise to see Quest Warlock coming into that instead. Now he is kind of forced into that tempo Demon Hunter life, but this matchup now for Zhym, we kind of set it up at the start of the day, but he just got to sit back and watch Boston win, which means Boston started, one spot above him. Boston has now, stretched out that gap to the point where Zhym, still winless at the bottom of the division, has just had additional pressure lumped on him for this matchup against RDU.
Right, and against RDU, it's going to be with this Galakron Priest, Demon Hunter, and Secret Rogue. So really, RDU bringing maybe the trend-tested Rogue list. Nothing too crazy sticking out. Demon Hunter again, more of the same. Although, there we go. They're going to be seeing the Vulpera Scoundrel maybe kick around a little bit, and there's been a lot of discussion about that card in Demon Hunter over the past few days. But I think most importantly, as you pointed out, the Galakron Priest, we're going to see what it's made of. And I will say, Sottle, maybe outside of the Warlock, maybe we put that deck to the side just for a second, but the Galakron Priest might not only be a very strong deck, but a deck that trips up the most players. Because if you have not played a lot of Priest recently, you might not know how some of these weird interactions work, and that can lose you games. So,
yes.
So I think this is the
shout outs to Crane, right?
Yeah. the best part of that was when I watched it, I was like, I knew that interaction, and Crane didn't. Yeah. But I will say there are a lot of interactions in Priest that you need to know, and you will lose if you mess them up, or at least you'll greatly increase your chances of losing. So this isn't a deck you can go, oh, Priest is strong, now I'll just chuck it in my lineup and see how I go. Some crazy stuff happens every single game, so you need to be locked and ready for it. So it's going to be a test, I think, for all the players across all regions this weekend, and we're going to see who are true Priest players and who are just posers, I think, for this one.
Wow, Raven putting these players on blast already. He's going to be calling out the Priest posers left, right, and center. Can't wait to see it. I am still super interested in the Quest Warlock overall, though. Right. Not in the least because I think it's a pretty smart bring, because I think it has one of the better matchups against Priest specifically. I imagine you win a enormous majority of the games where you draw plot twist in a timely manner, and a good chunk of the games where you don't as well against Priest, which when you add all that up has got to be a pretty absurd win rate overall against Priest. So I think that is particularly well positioned. I know when some people were trying to theory craft, like, what does a target Priest lineup look like this week, right? Like, if that's my read, that there's going to be a bunch of Priest, what's my target Priest lineup? And Highlander Hunter and Quest Warlock were really the first two decks that came to mind in that regard. So I do like it as a bring here, because not only is it potentially good against Priest, it's also good against aggro if people go the other way, just because of the sheer amount of raw healing that you have in the deck.
Yeah, and it feels that weird point at the moment in the meta for although it's maybe not the most consistent burst combo, and I'm not saying you have to reduce Malygos down to 0 or anything like that, but you can just put out a lot of damage from hand, even if it's just Nether Breaths and Soulfires, for example. That's just a lot of damage for not a lot of mana, and there aren't other decks at the moment that do that without minions, so there's nothing for Priest to interact with, right? Is the problem. They can't, like, steal your minion. You don't really play any good minions in this Warlock deck, believe it or not. So there's nothing to steal, there's nothing to really go crazy with, and then you'll just die at some point. And I think that's why this deck, specifically this Warlock deck, might be doing well versus Priest, because there's no other decks like it right now. There is no burst from hand decks that exist that don't need some heavy form of setup or board focus. So we'll see how it plays out, as I believe the players are getting ready to go in. But also I'm excited. We've not really talked about it, but Demon Hunter just adopting Vulpera Scoundrel seemingly at random. And when I first saw that, I was like, okay, what joke has just decided to go, no, I'll just put this in now and just see what happens. I feel like it's one of those moments where, like, Hunter Ace said it was good, and that's all that's needed for the community to jump on an idea. But from what I've been told by Demon Hunter players that play a lot more than me, the Vulpera Scoundrel is actually performing when they've been playing.
Yeah, so they say. I'm still yet to see it, but I actually did look at the numbers, so, like, my bias aside, I could actually get a decent look at it. And yeah, most of the time it should give you a, like, strong option, right? Like Chaos Strike and above, if you want to split it down like that. You should be looking at a spell of that quality at a minimum, which is pretty strong. But I was playing some practice games last night with TJ and Abar. Just because I was around, so I just kind of jumped in with the Americas testing session that was going down. And Abar was playing some Demon Hunter, and I think he played 4 Vulpera Scoundrels, and Mystery Choice was the best option every single time. In his Demon, and I think it was Mana Burn of the Mystery Choice, like 2 out of the 4 times as well. Like, it was not impressing us, but obviously we don't have the sheer number of games under our belt that a lot of these players do with Vulpera Scoundrel, which is kind of like why I went away and just looked at it objectively. And it should be okay in terms of just what spell you discover, but is that worth playing a 2/3 is the other question that you have to ask yourself.
That's my issue, right, as we get into game number 1. Sorry about the slight delay there. Game number 1, Demon Hunter versus Rogue. But yeah, for me, I just can't mentally get past the point of, regardless of what Vulpera Scoundrel offers you, in Demon Hunter, one of the most tempo/aggressive decks in the game plays a 2/3, 3 mana. Like, that's what I can't get past. It's like, why do you want to play this when everything else you're playing is so aggressive? The benefit, of course, is any discover effects in Demon Hunter at the moment, especially spells, for example, are going to be much more narrowed down because it's got a smaller pool of cards available.
Right.
So it's going to be more consistent. Whether that's consistently good or consistently bad, we'll have to wait and find out. So far, Zhym's off to a good start with his open hand. RDU is going to be able to fight back here, though. Praising Galakrond, trade off the 2/2, and also just having that shot available is bad versus Demon Hunter, mainly because it's just a sticky minion that I think trades very well versus the Demon Hunter minion, just being that 2 attack.
Yep, for sure. Very, very irritating against Demon Hunter. Anything that just cannot be dealt with just one straight up strike from Demon Hunter's hero power, no matter how many twin slices they want to stack on top of it, is a pretty useful option.
Weird set of choices here, honestly. Evasive Belt, A-Wing does not look as good as it looks in a lot of matchups because Demon Hunter just often has the damage available to deal with it. Yeah. And the untargetable isn't really an issue because they're never really trying to aim spells. It's normally just a weapon or minion. I think RDU just going for it as something just a little bit earlier to just play. Just need stuff to just drop out.
Yeah, and I'm very much in agreement with it. His curve is looking kind of ugly right now. So he just wants playable cards in the early game.
Something's nice though. Just going to buy him some time. And also Zhym always has to consider if this is Bamboozle or not, and if it is, then attacking to the stunner might actually be a problem.
Yeah. Makes the curve a little bit awkward, but I don't think there was a big way that RDU could have done it differently. For example, if this was Bamboozle, He could have just used the secret on this turn and then potentially used Blackjack Stunner on the next turn to combo his Miscreant. And because he knows his secret won't get procced if it's Bamboozle when he doesn't play any minions. But since it's Dirty Tricks here, like, Demon Hunter plays a million spells. There's a good chance that you just don't have this secret anymore if you don't get immediate use out of it. So I like it.
And also there is follow-up, right? The Shotbot Eviscerate if needed, Shotbot Dagger. There's just Evasive Fey Wing. So, and obviously he's reasonably likely, as you mentioned, to proc the secret, so he'll have even more options. So I think it's a... even its worst outcome, still pretty good. See him just suck it up and take the trade, see what happens. He gets the new. Job's done.
Yeah, Evasive Fey Wing seems good here.
Is this just a coin glaive bound go?
Actually, maybe it was just Shotbot Dagger. Because the Hanar was drawn. I was thinking that he needed the 2-cost cards to combo his Miscreant on the next turn, so his curve had to look like this. But he could just choose to tempo a Hanar as a 1/4 to activate his Miscreant on the following turn if he just went Shotbot Dagger that turn. It's kind of interesting.
I'd be surprised if there's not Glavebound going on here. You can do this to test the secret, so he'll know now there's no ambush. But even if there was an ambush, he would fall short of killing it, I guess. So that's the reason for the Twin Slice first, and then he can adapt there. So now that he's got the news, I think it's a very, very, very good Glavebound as opposed to a potential risky Glavebound.
Exactly. Us stupid casters in our caster vision, Raven, already knew what that secret was, but Zhym had to do the due diligence in figuring out what was going on. So it was good sequencing from him to create the swing turn with the Glavebound.
So many options.
So now this looks like the Shotbot of this turn.
They're very slow. Let's get that Praise Galakron as well. Just whipped in there. At least that's something. Gives him a Lackey as well, which can pop the Mischief easier next turn.
Yep. Nice. Kobold is almost certainly the best one in this matchup. Good stuff for RDU.
He's now just freezing her as well. Zhym if he really wants. It means he does have Metamorphosis hero power next turn if he wants it to. I think I like just not playing with this Shotbot.
All I see is weakness.
Zhym disagrees, he's going to go for that Overseer, start generating a bit of a wider board, but he does have to use his 2 1/1s to clean this up.
We're with you.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this line, I think. The freeze was kind of appealing, but you're walking into Seal Fate at that point, right? And you just don't really have that much of a board left over behind if your opponent just has Seal of Fate to pick you apart. Even like Seal Fate Dagger is taking apart most of your board state at that point.
Yeah, I suppose. I guess I was very focused on backstabs potentials, just getting more value here, whereas if at least you have the 4/3, it requires a dagger. But yeah, Seal Fate's definitely something to consider.
Whoa, he top deck Skull this turn, so lucky, etc, etc, etc. Sorry, someone in chat will take that seriously, won't they? I'm well aware that he chose to take that card.
He's casted!
I know, yeah.
No one in it.
Sorry.
Now, if Vulpera Scoundrel costs 0, then I can be persuaded to put it in my deck.
You fell right into
I did see the option there. Twin Slice, fantastic card.
Yep.
Course, so being able to generate that looks pretty good, but you've just got to always ask yourself, and something I'm going to be asking myself a lot the more we cast this Vulpera is the 2/3 and XL worth it, you know, over just a better minion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Twin Slice definitely went into my good spells column when I was breaking down the numbers on what you get from Vulpera Scoundrel, so one of the best cards in the Demon Hunter set, no doubt.
Oh, up to no good? Me too. It's
RDU just looking like he wants to just go as wide as possible. And honestly, if you're struggling with how to deal with Demon Hunter, a very, very basic level of advice is just try and just have more stuff than they do. Even if it's not necessarily bigger things. But like this turn, right? This turn doesn't look like a good turn. Against Demon Hunter, outside of an Altruis, just having a lot of things on board, even if they're a bit rubbish, means that you just have options to go forward into trading through them. Warclaves of Azeroth, on the other hand, can stop a plan like this.
I was gonna say, I get what you're saying, but there are a lot of ways that Zhym can punish multiple small minions, or that unknown Demon Hunter X can punish lots of small wide minions.
Specifically Zhym.
Yeah.
If you get Zhym on ladder, here's my suggestion: just play because you're probably pretty high legend, you're probably pretty good at the game.
Yeah, obviously Altruis is the one of, and like a lot of the times you can't play around it, right? Like if this skull had hit the Altruis, then whatever, that's probably just game over, right? No matter what you do. But Warglaves of Azeroth is just such a beating in a lot of scenarios when you make board states like this.
I guess so. Honestly, like if the Warglaves are trading into these minions, is it a huge loss to RDU to use them? Obviously, you would rather have a board, but it's into a lot of nothing minions, right?
Right. I mean, that's the point. I hear people make that point a lot, and it's like, well, the Demon Hunter has the option, right? Like, if this wasn't a good thing for them to be doing, they wouldn't be doing it. They'd just hit you in the face with their weapons, you know? So much damage backing this up now. Bladebound Adept number 2, Metamorphosis, and the second slice plus hero powers.
I wonder.
It's definitely a little bit nuts, isn't it? And I think it's what really just pushes Demon Hunter to how good it is, even post nerfs. It's just it has the good enough minions early game to push damage, and then it just has finisher after finisher, doesn't it? Just like almost unstoppable damage, man.
Right. It's a pretty good 4-6 taunt though, because RDU actually has pretty clean information right now of second slices in hand plus the hero power. That's a 5 damage swing that's available. So it does mean Zhym has to tank it twice, because he'll get the additional 1 damage attack after attacking with Warglaves if he uses his hero power. So it can still be dealt with.
Yeah, using Gladebound instead of the second swing. Just using it to go into a 1-1 instead. My point being that, yes, it very much overkills the flick, but it saves Zhym some health. And he's looking a little bit low, and it's not like Zhym needs every point of damage to go face to win the game here. I think like, he still has a ton of damage. Especially being able to buff his Gladebound up.
Well, he kinda does, right? That's 4 damage that didn't go face, which means if the 6-6 doesn't connect, he's a long way short of the damage he needs.
They always draw damage.
Okay.
I will say, I honestly do believe the 6-6 connects a lot of the time. This Faceless Scriptor could obviously change that, but I don't think there are that many cards left that would stop it, generally, right?
I mean, in a literal sense, there's still 2 Shield of Galacrons, but you can just, like, Metamorphosis shoot the Shield of Galacron, but again, that's damage that's then not going face.
Right, yeah.
So you can kind of argue that whichever way you want. There's some secrets and 1 Blackjack Stunner left. That's about it, I guess. There's Seal Fate and Devoted Maniac, which aren't good enough. Like, otherwise it's combinations of cards, right? Like Backstab, Devoted Maniac, generate a minion, Faceless Corruptor. Although I guess
it's not like Ryder's on a big hand right now, is he?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the time from this Vulpera, most players I imagine are actually looking for card draw, right? Because there's so much of it in Demon Hunter. It's reasonably likely to get some kind of card impatient.
So Vaporize, Ambush, Redemption.
You fell right into my trap.
Probably worth second slice as well, right? Doesn't know it's not counterspell.
Time grows short.
This Vaporize is insane.
This Vaporize is actually pretty nutty.
Yeah, sorry I didn't mention Vaporize when I said things that would stop this connecting, but
Yeah.
wasn't really top of my list.
Yeah. Okay, that's going to proc the
Zhym can't-
redemption now. He knows this is a free trade now if he wants it. There's no mage secret that would prevent that trade.
Well,
He's going to go ahead and take it. And now that means that 6-5 is not going to get to have gone face.
The pretty easy-going Krunks for RDU, I feel here. 18 health. The Vaporize is still up. He can kill off the 6-5 with the 2-1 that's left over. Still play a snack.
Return is nigh.
Looking
I like
pretty
it.
good, honestly, for RDU.
He's one invoke short right now. He has one Seal Fate he can draw next turn, play all in the same turn. To get full invoke. 1 in 14.
Altreus is very dead if played this turn, of course, because of the snack. I wonder if this is the time to just get the Metamorphosis up. I think he wants to do it all, just to try and kill the Krug.
So if you hero power Metamorphosis hero power, you're dealing 6 this turn, your opponent's at 10. You
I
then
grow
have 6,
impatient.
7, 8. So a top deck that deals damage to RDU's face is lethal with the Altruist next turn if you just go all face here. That doesn't play around Snipe, of course.
Yeah. However,
But it is logical.
you will get some level of news here in that he cast a spell with a minion on board, so it's not
Dark in the sky.
Pressure plate.
pressure plate. He knows it's not explosive now, so he's getting some information that Snipe is more and more becoming a possibility.
Actually, no, hang on. This is nonsense, isn't it? Didn't you have to kill the 6/6? Because you know your opponent has Galakron in hand. Like, didn't you just zero out yourself by going face in that position as Zhym?
Yeah.
I am confused.
Unless, is he just relying on drawing more cards to go hero power Altruist this turn to maybe kill a bigger board?
That's nonsense, isn't it?
Reason?
No.
It might be Sol. It might be nonsense. I'm trying to think of a reason, right? When you shape it out, right? The 5 damage just gets auto healed.
Yeah, if you're saying your plan is like top deck skull, then it's better to clear and try and play the longer game with a top deck skull, right?
Probably, yeah.
I don't know, this seems very weird now that I look at it. In the cold, hard light of day.
Zhym feels very dead now that I look at it. Nothing he can do either because he has to play around Snipe. He'd have to play the Battlemaster, but then that just means he only has Twin Slice, and that's not enough to actually kill off the.
Sorry.
There you go.
Okay, fair enough.
Nobody saw that. I will say that the Battlemaster would have actually locked out even just potential chances at going for the Shield of Galakron, right? It couldn't have been cleared off because there'd only be the Twin Slice to deal 1. You'd have to hero power the Krunks. That would still leave the shield up and cause some issues there. So a bit of a weird last couple of moments there for Zhym. And I wonder if that was just a bit of a blank moment for him where he just didn't really consider the fact that Krunks was Drew Galakron and healed the damage he did to face anyway. Maybe he was just thinking he needs the ultimate Altruist into Skull, into 100 cards that cost 0. I don't know, but it's a bit of a strange one. Strange way to end that game.
It was. So the reality of the situation was that I think he was kind of like dead man walking at that point anyway, because we know he couldn't have played the Altruist and cleared the Kronks without taking damage because there was a snipe in play. I'm not sure how far down the line Zhym was in terms of his position and working out what secret that was and what was eliminated, but I don't think he was very far, right? Because he was just played recently. It wasn't one of the old Hanar secrets that came a couple of turns before. So it might be Zhym had a plan based on like what secret he narrowed that down to. But from where I was sat, it looked like a weird decision. But the reality is he was dead no matter what he did in that scenario. So, yeah.
Yep, and a good win there for RDU, taking the win on Rogue versus the Demon Hunters. Got to feel good, even though I believe the thoughts on that matchup are still very close, if not very doable for Rogue. But that was just game number 1. We have plenty more games coming up for you, not only in this match, but for today, as we have a total of 4 matches, and in Americas is going to follow up a little bit later on as usual. But for now, we are going to go to a break while we set up game number 2 between Zhym and RDU. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with some more Hearthstone. We are back and ready to continue our series between Zhym and RDU. RDU is taking a win with Rogue against Zhym's Demon Hunter. Means that's a good one to tick off the list as far as I'm concerned, Sottle. So it puts RDU in the lead in this series, which means he's just got Priest and his Demon Hunter left versus the full suite of decks here with Warlock, Demon Hunter, and Hunter. So difficult to name one after the others. Demon Hunter and Hunter just seems too many of the same word. But RDU is leading the way, and I'm just quite excited, believe it or not, just to see more of or some of this Priest play, to see how it lines up. Because as I said, I feel like Priest is building and been building over the past few weeks, and I think I would just want to see more players actually play on the big stage, so to speak.
Sorry, my mind immediately went to, hey, I'm Demon Hunter, and this is my partner, Regular Hunter.
We can work it in no matter what, can't we?
Yeah, but here we are. Priest is up to bat here for RDU. Apologies for that slightly extended break as well. RDU was trying to get his camera working. I believe at the end of the last game, that was his camera capture software that we caught a glimpse of malfunctioning towards the end. But looks like RDU has not been too successful in getting his fancy SLR setup working again. So we are just met with this rather stern-looking view of RDU instead, which we'll have to make do with.
Apologies for all the RDU fans out there. We do not get live footage, but we do get live gameplay. And it is that kind of weird matchup we were talking about, Sottle, of Priest versus Quest Warlock. And I think there's 2 things here. One, Quest Warlock might be a deck that can do it pretty consistently versus Priest. But 2, it's fairly new. So I don't even think it's really been tried and tested too much, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, and it is a very difficult deck to play as well. It's a very easy deck to make mistakes with. But I will say, by far and away, more so in this matchup than any other, I do think Plot Twist is just the key card. It may sound kind of reductive to say that, Plot Twist is a key card in the deck that plays a quest where you have to draw 20 cards. But in a lot of matchups, you can just get by with lots of removal, lots of healing, and then some board dominance later on. Whereas against Priest, I really think you do just want to get that quest done nice and early, and then it's a pretty straightforward win from there in a lot of scenarios.
And already we're starting to see Priest do Priest things, and the fact that there's the Abyssal Summoner in hand here for RDU does change a lot of stuff. It's one of the strengths you need as a Priest player, is to be able to be flexible, adapt to what's given to you, because you actually don't do the same thing every single time, right? Which is often in card games what you want your deck to do. You want it to consistently do the same thing every single game you play. Priest just says, now we're going to do something different every single time we play. And although a lot of people might enjoy doing that, it's also pretty hard to actually manage at a high level.
I do like this plan from RDU. It's something that I tried out as well with sort of middling success, I guess, where a lot of people might feel like, well, Apotheosis is such a key card later, where, when they reach the stage of the game where they're trying to burst me down, I can just get big health swings out of the Apotheosis later. But I think RDU using it for pressure there early on makes a lot of sense, because you put your opponent on pretty much Dark Skies exactly at that point to be able to deal with your whole board. And, they're only increasingly more and more likely to have that big Dark Skies clear as time goes on. So I think pressuring early is pretty big. Sort of multiplied by the fact that quite often, if they get a decent draw, they can just OTK you from 30 anyway, so you don't really have an opportunity to be swinging back health totals with Apotheosis in the late game.
And even if you don't extreme it at 30, it's 20s, you know. It's like I think like even 20 isn't that crazy to talk about. So we'll see how it plays out.
If they get 0 mana Alex, right? Like essentially your health total is irrelevant, like literally irrelevant.
Right. I was more thinking about potential Malagos outcomes, but yeah, you are. So this one came down for RDU. Did have a couple of options, and I think one thing we have to keep in mind already is this Moag Artificer in RDU's hand works wonders with Penance, works wonders with Breath of the Infinite, especially when it's buffed, I'll say, on his side with holding the dragon. So RDU has access to a lot of high-level removal. It's just it wasn't quite enough to cleanly kill this 8/8, which is the reason I went for the Abyssal instead.
This Moag Artificer is a card that was in Priest for quite some time. In fact, I think some players are still running the Moag Artificer version, even in GM. So it's a very useful card with multiple effects in the deck. How about a nice 8/8 Reborn? Or 7/7 Reborn, I think his was?
Will it be? Will it not be one?
Be born again.
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. I'll confess, that is one interaction. I was talking about knowing your priest interaction. I failed at the first hurdle. Because I didn't know if like the minion's name is effectively like a 1/1 and it gains its health from the being played. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just a weird one.
So here's how I understand it. I think because the stats are white, like they come down as regular stats, not buffed stats.
Oh,
that's the vanilla stats of that minion. I think
super weird though, because the minion's called the same thing no matter what health and attack it's got, right? So it's just it's very, very strange. Either way, didn't end up coming down, and now there's a very timely time break to deal with this 9/9. It's one of those weird issues, right? It's who is the player who needs to get this done quickly? Is RDU kind of the aggressor here because there's a certain level of burst damage available from Zhym in the very, very late game when he's basically drawn his whole deck?
I believe so, yes. I think Priest does have to play the aggressor very much in this matchup. Because, you know, I was talking about plot twist, right? I set it up as a start. It's like, I think Warlock wins almost every time they get early plot twist. And a good chunk of the times they don't as well. Because even if you don't get plot twist as the Warlock, and the Priest isn't very successful in pressuring you, well, then you just complete your quest naturally, and you just still have 2 plot twists in your deck, so that you can just, you know, you can rebuy, like, this hand that he has right now, for example, where Alexstrasza and Malagos are in hand. You can just put those back in the deck and then draw them to 0 again. So if you give the Warlock too much time, like it's just going to OTK you more often than not in this matchup. So RDU does really kind of have to find some sort of plan.
Yeah, we'll just point out though for players who aren't overly familiar with the deck, you can't guarantee a 0 mana draw on a specific card, as you are just live tapping, seeing what you draw and it's 0. That's how the quested hero power works. So although you can increase chances, I guess the one thing limiting the deck from being all powerful is the fact that you can't actually set it up purposely. Because otherwise I think the deck would just be insane at that point. So although Zhym can give himself a better chance to do it, it's not like it's inevitable. Right.
Yeah, I do think people also somewhat overstate like the vulnerability of the decks. Oh well, you know, if I don't get my big dragons for 0, then I can't win. Like that's absolutely not the case. If you can find a turn just to play Alex for 9 safely without dying in a lot of matchups, you can kind of just win off that anyway. Like regular Alexstrasza your opponent to 15, and say you still have coin available, right? Like just Rain of Fire and Soulfire with even again a 9 mana Malagos and a coin is then lethal from that point. Like, there's so many ways this deck can put it together to still kill you, even if they don't hit any of the discounts.
Care to dance with
You do need plot twist, though. That is the big problem.
The age-old problem here is starting to kick in here just a little bit for RDU, in that the lack of card draw for Priest is something that exists, and he can't really mimic it like he could do in the Rogue matchup with some of their card draw opportunities. The Warlock doesn't really run card draw outside of its hero power and plot twist. It's like mimicable with the Morozon.
Sense demons. Oh,
Well,
nutty.
yeah, exactly, right, exactly. So it's still a little bit tricky for RDU, although he's doing okay, and he's got Zhym down to some lowish health. A lot of that doesn't matter when Nether Breath's involved and all the healing that's around that for Zhym.
Yeah.
So although this game looks like RDU's kind of putting the pressure on, especially because he can do a half-decent job of clearing this board, or at least half of it, he's still a long way away yet, and he needs to draw a lot more cards to really have a chance to win this game versus Zhym.
Right. It might look like Zhym's at 15 here. He's just not. He's at 100. That's the reality. Like, that's so much health in the Priest matchup. He's so far away from getting lethaled by RDU.
Power into gets.
Job's done. You are too late. This return is nigh.
And honestly, even this is scary, right? You see, there's been no plot twist, and Zim's nearly got his quest. He's also just stuck 8 power to the board.
Yep.
Like, Alex, now? Go?
Okay, that does become a little scary when you're at 15 and there's 8 in play. I will concede that is probably quite a low health total at that point.
It is, but how does Priest do 7?
Veil Weaver. That's how they do 7.
What cards are those?
I mean, Apotheosis, Power Infusion, Psych Split, they all add damage.
7's a big number, though.
7 is a big number. Maybe there is just no combination outside of, like, triple back-to-back Apotheosis.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Apotheosis. Oh, I got an Apotheosis. Apotheosis.
Even that's
Oh, I
only...
got
Even that's only 6, yeah. Shadow Madness, though, is also damage if you leave your 3-2 up on board.
It's purely the fact that there's Soulfire, Nether Breath, Malygos already in hand. Like,
Here's my actual argument, though, Raven. You're winning by so much. Why would you ever take that risk?
to respect people's time.
Sure.
Probably not a good
Ooh!
enough reason, honestly.
That's the 4th invoke off the top
That
for
is
a
very
full
quick.
clear with the Galacront. Okay.
I think it's fair to say you don't really expect to get full Galacron that often as while playing Priest.
Right.
So this is nice. Not only the clear, but also the weapon.
Yep. Weapon's huge.
And it's something we mentioned or discussed a little bit earlier is Priest players aren't really running Ooze. I'm still not quite sure why they're not running Ooze. I know this isn't relevant to RDU having a weapon, but just in general. I do just wonder if that's going to creep in the next week or so.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now I'm kind of into the Alexstrasza. Although plot twist being drawn exclusive exactly this turn does make life kind of interesting. This is a significantly safer Alexstrasza than the previous turn. Of either variety, actually. You can even go to Dragon Queen.
I was leaning Dragon Queen, honestly. It's just the
Yes, makes
usual
sense.
setup, isn't it? The 1-2. Oh! Oh,
Zero
my.
Mana Valley, baby! Let's go!
It's just already dead. So we can Mally Soulfire for what, 14?
Yeah, he can also Alex Mally Soulfire. Which doesn't quite get there, but is still enormous damage. He also has Active Zephyrus in hand, which does read spell damage because it's a keyword. So that will play with his Zero Mana Mally as well.
What if?
I wonder if I'd ever give him Faceless.
Future is clear.
Zero Mana Mally Faceless.
Introduction to
time.
how dead you are.
What a time for RDU to not have his camera on. Shape up. Because I would have loved to see his response to this. A little peek at your opponent's hand, and you basically see a premonition of your own death at this point.
Yeah. It's got to be the Mally, right?
Time is running out.
Part of me would have considered Alex.
Why? What are you doing with an Alexstrasza?
I think he might have to consider killing it pretty soon. Alex helps a little bit.
Okay, but There was a bunch of stuff on the board that needed
Could soul
killing
mirror
that
that.
turn. Sure. Okay. Zhym keeps the Ysera then, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you just get to keep these Sarah. But then again, so do you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, I actually think I like the Alex pick there. So I don't think, as we mentioned throughout most of the game, I don't think RDU can play a slow game here. I think if he had the opportunity to play a card to deal 8, he has one swing of the weapon left over. Maybe that just helps him get there. So it's a risk, it's definitely not guaranteed.
This play did put a 6-14 into play this turn and clear his opponent's board. Like, isn't that just even in like your world of like do things fast and kill your opponent? Isn't that better than just having an Alex Straza in your hand and being behind on board?
You'd still be ahead. You would get the Ysera as well, right? Ysera should give you more damage.
Sure.
My overall point is, I think RDU has to do some risky stuff to win this game. Oh,
Yeah.
I bring life and hope.
okay, that's fun. He gets to play the game. Oh, this is it lethal? No.
Mali Soulfire is 14. Mali Zephyrus has got to be lethal, right? No, that doesn't work.
You can't
'cause
play
the
it,
second
yeah.
one still costs 9. Yeah.
Make room in his hand somehow.
He
Zephyrus
just goes 0
Fireball,
Mali,
yeah.
plays the Zephyrus. Yep.
As long as he didn't discard the Zephyrus, he was fine, right?
Correct.
That's going to be the game. Zhym evens up the series 1-1. And Priest gets taken down here off the back of this Quest Warlock. And I'm excited to see where this Quest Warlock goes, Sol, because I know you really like the deck. And I've come up against it a lot on ladder. I've not really played tons of it myself. But I do think it's a deck that was really on the cusp. And now with the Zoo nerfs as well, it's really going to start taking hold. Because honestly, for me, the more decks that seem to do well versus Priest, I'll say the better. Bring them on. So we'll see how that plays out across the rest of the weekend. But Zhym manages to even this up and get a much needed win on the board, as we mentioned earlier. Boston already got his win for the day. Zhym desperately needs to at least keep up.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to the ending there as well, like whether he needed to go with the lethal that had a failure rate when he had the Twisting Nether in his hand, for example. He could just kind of life tap, reset, just, wait even to get guaranteed lethal with the quality of his hand that he had. I think he was so secure that maybe that wasn't even a risk that necessarily needed taken. It's a very weird stance to take. It's like, hey, he made a play and won the game, but here I am like calling him out for it, But maybe
you winning the game that turn was wrong.
yeah. But maybe he was so far ahead that he just didn't even need to have that failure rate. But who knows? I think that deck is, as you said, super interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot more of it going forward, because I think it is potentially a deck that we, can maybe see some specialists come to the front. As much as I know that's a dirty word, where we might be able to see a few of those players with absolute mastery of that deck really pushing it to its absolute limits. I think it does have a pretty high skill cap overall.
Right, now we get to see what's left over for these players, and it is Demon Hunter on both sides, but then Hunter and Priest. So at a base level, you just have to say Zhym has an advantage overall, because his Hunter just beats the one different deck here from RDU. But the way the interactions can go is Hunter can very much die to Demon Hunter, and then also Priest can beat Demon Hunter as well. So a lot of this might well just come down to where the matchups end up landing. And again, not particularly talking about pick order, but if Priest goes against Hunter, it's a big difference if that gets locked in instead of Demon Hunter for Zhym. So we'll see how it plays out.
It is for sure, because I think prior to the nerf wave, just talking about the other relevant matchup here, I think we're accepting that Highlander Hunter is favored against Priest, right? Yes. So outside of that, you've got Demon Hunter versus Priest as the other non-mirror, which I think prior to the patch, a lot of people would have argued that Demon Hunter was at least even and maybe even slightly favored against Priest overall. But I think with round 13 of nerfs to Demon Hunter, or whatever it is we're on now, I think we might have just finally hit that tipping point where maybe Priest is just pulling out a little bit ahead in that matchup, especially as the lists from Priest are getting better and better and better over time as well. So I think that should be a matchup where you're okay with playing Priest. At least, 50-50 or slightly above is probably where it sits at the moment. So yeah, it's a very finely balanced series, as you mentioned.
Yep, and I do think that not only are the Priest lists getting better, but I think with the almost laser focus the community's had on Priest in the last week or so, that the plays are just getting better too. Because again, I mentioned it I'll probably keep talking about this, but the Priest deck might be powerful, might be able to do broken things, but it's hard to manage sometimes. You need to know what your limits are. You need to know when you need to force heals, when you can just be a bit more loose. You need to know how to utilize all the opponent's cards to a good fashion as well. So it's pretty hard to play, and because everyone's kind of jumping on the Priest bandwagon at the moment, players have probably put way more practice into Priest this week than they have in the past few weeks. So we'll see that play continue to sharpen up over time. But let's get into it. It's going to be the Demon Hunter versus, I'll be honest, I didn't look. So how do you play?
He's playing Priest, right?
Okay, cool. I was looking at some the deck list as well as looking at Zhym's mulligan and just missed RDU's lightning mulligan there.
Yeah. Yeah, he full mulled away, I think, double Shadow of Death and Apotheosis, I believe, was the mull, which makes sense. It's
and
none of
Lazul.
really what you're looking for. And Lazul, okay.
Oof.
It's looking a little bit better. Penance in the early game is nice. Obviously, Breath of the Infinite you're looking for. Shadow Madness can be pretty good. I even actually think now that Demon Hunter's got a little bit slower, that Fate Weaver is arguably a keep as well in this matchup, alongside, say, if you have one Invoke plus Fate Weaver as your opening hand, I think that is a considerable keep as well in this matchup.
Yeah, a lot of the time, actually, as Priest, just playing a Fate Weaver on 4 and just saying, here's a dude with a lot of health that kills all your minions, what are you going to do about it? And just let them worry about it. If it lives, it's a great Apotheosis target. It's honestly just not a bad target to trade and then heal it up. Because although you're not healing your own face, the more your Fate Weaver trades with the board, the better, right? It saves your health.
So, considerations here to actually using a Renew this turn, I think. Which might seem a little bit awkward. Is he just going to coin Penance straight up? He's going to coin Sethic instead. Okay, sure. Fine with this. So I think all the plays were justifiable. I think spending a mana on Renew there is interesting, because if you potentially get a spell to play on turn 3, Dark Prophecy, summon a 2-drop, give it +3 health, or Shadow Madness, you want to have that mana spent on turn 1 so that you can find that play for turn 3. You then Penancing on turn 2. But RDU's going to do it the other way round. He tried to use the Sethic Veil Weaver to kill the Battle Fiend, which didn't work out, but then his turn 2 is Penance, and then he's going to look for something to do on turn 3 with the Renew instead.
And these plays and draws come in thick and fast for these players. Data Overseer, not bad. Zhym just continuing to pressure. This is extremely weak to Breath of the Infinite, but honestly, so is everything Demon Hunter does in these early turns of the game, so he could have played around it with the Vulpera Scoundrel instead, but it is significantly less pressure, so Zhym just taking that risk now.
Another part of my argument as to potentially playing Renew on 1 there, because again, okay, so Breath of the Infinite didn't appear, but then, so even in results-oriented land, he could have potentially had a Shadow Madness playable this turn, if he'd gone about it a different way and been able to clear up the Satyr Overseers. Okay. Alright, that's a fairly impressive Vulpera Scoundrel.
Did you go Mana Burn now?
Mana Burn's very interesting.
RDU just played Renew Pass that turn. I'm down for a Mana Burn, yeah, and so is Zhym. I like this a lot, because if your opponent played a slow turn, make him play another one. And you know what? Sometimes they might just be dead the turn after. I like this a lot.
Yeah, that was just 3 pretty high-quality cards from the Vulpera Scoundrel. Mana Burn, situationally very useful. And that's kind of the upside of Discover effects of cards like Vulpera Scoundrel, right? Like, maybe you don't want to put Mana Burn in your deck. Well, actually, you're not allowed to, because we've established that you have to be a former world champion to play Mana Burn in Demon Hunter. It's the Hunter/Tom 60229 tech. So since you're not allowed to play Mana Burn, you can sometimes discover it in situations where it's good for you, even though perhaps it being in your deck to begin with, it's a little bit too situational to be effective.
Yeah, and as you've probably noticed, even from the limited amount of Vulpera Scoundrels that have been played, Demon Hunter's spells are generally extremely low cost, which means you can almost always find space to play them, right?
There's a lot of... I mean, the ones that get played are very low cost, but there's all the weird Illidari stuff and Chaos Nova and all the like control Demon Hunter cards that you do get offered quite often as well, that sometimes means that you don't really get a cheap option. It can happen.
Oh, sure. It could definitely whiff. My point being more is that it's likely you get at least one very cheap option. So a lot of the time, just having a cheap playable card is better than having an expensive good card, if that makes sense. So
Sure, yeah.
Like I said, I'm still learning about Scoundrel. I'm not overly convinced, but I'm willing to, learn as I go and watch what happens. So far, there's what, 3, 4... damage available here from Zhym, regardless of anything else he does outside of hero power.
Oh!
Whoa!
Just
okay.
simply dead. Forget about it. You think a 4/5 taunt is going to stop all this damage going face?
Act as your scape.
I wondered whether that was double Shadow Madness on the 1/1s. Imagine. Trade them both.
Not even going to count. It's just literally
right?
always lethal.
Well, that was quick. And honestly, the mana burn was huge there, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Scoundrel game-winning card. Why did I ever doubt it after this one game we've seen where it's won? Clearly the best card in the deck. Zhym, a true gentleman, not casting more cards than he really needed, just making sure he had enough, didn't go for the Chaos Strike at the end. But he is going to take the game with RDU and now go 2-1 up. Zhym currently 0-3 in Grandmasters round robin, so he is in great need of this final win here over RDU to put 1 point on the board and basically keep himself at least just about floating in the dangerous waters of Division B.
Just got a nice look at that little FC Barcelona like polo that he's rocking as well, looking fresh. I'm liking it. It's a good look for Zhym. But what is also a good look is how clean that Demon Hunter game was for him. I do have questions about the early game curve for RDU. If he watches this and wants to explain his thought process to me, then he is welcome to do so.
We'll see him outside.
Yeah, but to me, like that curve looked like renew on 1, penance on 2, and then find something to do on 3. But he went about it very differently. In results-oriented world, maybe my line would have worked out better, but of course that doesn't mean anything. He might have certain things that his line is good against. That he might have actually got the good trade against the Battlefiend with his 2/3, right? Like that's a significant upside some of the time that can actually happen. Believe it or not, Demon Hunter isn't always able to kill every minion that you play for the first couple of turns. So there are definitely upsides to the way he played it, but I'd be interested to hear his thought process.
Yeah, and it is also tough as well, because in a lot of the Demon Hunter matchups, you think, okay, if I survive the first wave of, first few turns of minions, then all I need to do is just survive the burst damage later on, and obviously renew a form of heal. But I think having them in that early in the game, having both of them, I do think one becomes very just playable, to just like throw away. That makes sense. But we are going to move swiftly on into game number 4 here. Zhym only has his Highlander Hunter left to take a win with RDU flicking over to his Demon Hunter, which is also a Volpera Scoundrel.
This start is monstrous for Zhym, though. Coin Zephyrus Backstab into second 2-drop into Desert Spear or Dwarven Sharpshooter Hero Power on 3? That curve looks absurd. Sorry, option number 3, or Frozen Shadow Weaver on 3.
Your wish is my suggestion.
This start is nonsense.
Pretty good, right?
Backstab's always better than shield. Sorry, in this exact scenario against Demon Hunter, I guess I should make that a lot more
careful.
Clear. Yeah. Power Word Shield is good sometimes, but if you can kill a 2/2 instead of giving your guy 2 more health, like that's just better, right?
Oh, another Chaos Strike. Very timely. I think it just goes for it, right?
I would imagine so, yeah. No? Okay. Believe in the Volpera. Fine.
Very interesting.
All right, teach me the ways of Volpera or RDU. Do you pick I-Beam because it's the one that's playable? Do you pick Immolation Aura because it might dig you out of something weird scenario? Chaos Nova, same reason? Or do you just mystery choice? I just don't know. I'm not a Volpera Scoundrel player.
I think if I was actually in this game of Hearthstone, I would go for I-Beam just because I know it's just the best card on offer, as in just a card. But Chaos Nova could potentially be the thing you are missing in the deck that could just help wipe a hunter's board a lot of the time. So maybe I would consider it. But honestly, again, as not really someone who's played a ton of Volpera, I'd probably pick I-Beam just because I'm like, I-Beam's a good card. And I want to play it.
Desert Spear is unfortunately inefficient this turn. But it's not great timing for the Frozen Shadow Weaver. It does lock out the first turn where Satyr Overseer plus Hero Power would have been possible.
I think that's its space. Okay. Get it equipped. Still kills. It's not like the Volpera is unkillable, right? Still kill off Volpera, no problem. And having Desert Spear just equipped is great, especially versus Demon Hunter. And as you mentioned, the timing for the Frozen Shadow Weaver looks way more appetizing next turn.
This was part of the reason why I was curious about the Volpera choice on the previous turn. Because, yeah, I-Beam is a very good card, but you're going to draw a card next turn, and then your I-Beam is going to get slowly forced into the middle of your hand, and you have multiple turns of stuff to play on the left-hand side before it gets over there as well.
Yeah, I wonder if just versus Hunter, I-Beam for 3 mana is sometimes just fine.
Yeah, maybe.
A bunch of big bears!
So now we've hit Twin Slice into Gladebound turn. That's the timing on the Frozen Shadow Weaver.
Yeah, and also, this is going to line up perfectly with this Desert Spear to go straight into a Faceless Corruptor next turn, if Zhym feels the need to.
Right. You see both options here getting locked out from RDU's side. He doesn't have the Twin Slice to go with the Gladebound, but the Gladebound is there. But more importantly, it's locking down that Warglaves, which would be an easy full clear for RDU this turn. Yep, like it. RDU just sets up anyway. Gonna go for the 2-turn. So now as much power as possible, I imagine, is the order of the day. Or just try and lock out the Gladebound with the Boom Pistol Bunny instead.
I think I like this because if he went for Faceless Corruptor, yes, it would do a lot of damage, but it is clearable for RD with just a hero power, right?
Sure.
Whereas this not only requires more than a hero power to kill the Boom Pistol, but as you said, quite rightly, it also just locks out Gladebound.
How much would he take clearing, though? 12, 13 if Faceless Corruptor came down?
Impatient.
Be at 5. Alright, 5's not low enough. Sure.
Alright, 5's not 0.
Well, it needed to be 3, right? If it was 3, then we'll say, sure, you Faceless Corruptor there every time.
All I see is weakness.
We're going to see just the hardcast I-Beam here.
We're with
Gotta be, right?
Yeah.
you. We're with you.
Satyr Overseer is a hard minion to race, but it's already dead to the Desert Spear that's already locked in this turn. Does mean that Zhym doesn't get to use his Faceless Corruptor alongside it, although he could for efficiency's purposes.
I wondered whether...
I wonder.
For some reason, I looked at 5-5 into the 4-2, swing the weapon in the 1-1 just into a 2-2, and then Faceless Corrupt to the 5-1, and then double trade.
Okay.
I think there's probably something glaringly wrong with that. It's just where my brain jumped to, and I don't really know why.
Okay.
And I think it's really just saving him saving him 2 damage, or 2 health. Zhym on board.
Yeah, looks like it. It's a pretty comfortable full clear, but it's the least aggressive play he can make that turn, I guess, is my problem with it. So he's kind of settling in for the long game against Demon Hunter, which, you know, answers on a postcard whether you think that's the right idea or not.
He does have good cards for it though, right? Dragonbane is a bit of a pain for Demon Hunter to deal with and puts out a lot of damage. He has kind of rarely a lot of resources, right? The Primordial Explorer generates another card. Big ol' Whelp draws him a card. He's got a card off the top next turn. So if he can keep RDU just pushed back a little bit, which technically these two 4/2s should do, at least for one turn, then maybe it's just good enough.
Hey, I got you, friend.
Frustratingly hit for Zhym though. This extra health on the Gladebound is a bit of a nightmare.
Storm Hammer now.
Probably take Brightwing.
Cheap playable dragon that refreshes your Stormhammer later, yeah. But now Zhym finds himself in a scenario where he's pretty much just got to try and race a Gladebound Adept, which is not an easy thing to do against Demon Hunter.
The easy way you mentally overcome this is by realizing that there's no other choice. Oh, surely it's not Dragonbane here.
Time moves quickly.
I mean, playing
I thought-
Dragonbane would be more consistent with his plan last turn, which is, you know, just controlling board and stretching out the game. The Stormhammer plan would have, you know, rewarded, you know, pushing 5 with the Boom Pistol Bully on the previous turn.
I just feel that Stormhammer has no cares for previous plans when it's drawn, so
Sure.
we'll see. We'll see how it pays off. I am interested here because this is, like I said, it's hard to ignore a Stormhammer plan because it is so good all of the time. But this Dragonbane is arguably a must-kill minion unless RDU can just go wide, and then it's way less. Although RDU could go even different here. He could freeze the 2/3 and then just play Gladebound Adept and trade the Gladebound Adept he has into the Dragonbane.
Demons.
How about that? A 4/3, 6/3, a 6/4, and a 1/2.
I kind of like that.
Right, this is to me less power, right? You could just have a 4/3 as well.
It is, but you know, there's still RDU's perception of what these cards that are stuck in hand for Zhym are in the scenario. But Zephyrus is already gone, so you're not really going to get punished for just, you know, over-committing to board, essentially.
And also it's set up lethal, right?
We are friends now.
12, 16, 17 in play, plus the 1 from the hero power? Yeah, it would have done.
Oh wait, no. He swung face last turn, right? And he wouldn't have done it.
Oh, with his hero power last
So he would have
turn?
been 1 off, yeah.
So he'd be at
apologies,
19?
yeah.
Okay, sure.
I mean, it's still pretty close, but yeah, no, it would not. It's not an exact set.
Okay. Well, then you'd still Salb Lethal with Altruis, play your top deck card, as long as it's cheap enough in hero power phase.
True. Yeah, that's true. Still, though, this is tough to deal with for Zhym here. Yeah, with Prime.
Archspore Mishapin. This one's coming down to
we
the
just got-
wire.
Stormhammer plan. It's like, just get him.
Yep. So 13 in play, 14 from the hero power, 15 from Umberwing, 16, 17?
17, yeah, 17.
14, 15, 16, 17. Yep.
And he can freeze face, though, which is pretty important. That means lethal on the backswing from Zhym is much less likely if he can't swing that Stormhammer.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's not got lethal now... Oh, well, that would actually kill the Brightwing as well, right?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, see, yeah, I mean, that's insane, right? It has to be, what, exactly Bran into hero power? Which there's nothing he can really do about anyway.
Right.
He can't skull into anything that saves him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, okay. Skull Eye Beam would save him, but then he can't freeze, so it actually does nothing. Yeah, I think it just makes the Altruist play sets up as much as possible.
Gonna hold. Okay. Also, he was actually 2 off that turn because I counted hero power. He couldn't do all that, right? Yeah, he only had exact mana for Altruist, Frozen Shadow Weaver, Umberwing, so he had 16, not 17, because he couldn't hero power as well. But, you know, everything we said still applies.
I wonder.
I think, does Zhym just need Big Ol' Whelping to unleash the hounds this turn? To have any chance?
Siamat, Divine Shield, Taunt, doesn't do anything.
Yeah, the 1-2 here is a nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah.
Winds of the south, come to my aid!
Rush Wind Fury and kill the 4-3, kill the 6-3. And the 7. And we can see that is actually going to be game. As RDU can make up the difference with the Altruist. And with the game as well. Pretty simple off the top there. And RDU evens the series up versus Zhym. 2-2. And it's another match that's coming down to the wire. We go into game number 5. Zhym currently 0-3 in the round robin so far. Much needed, or this could be a much needed win, but RDU definitely wants those points for himself as well to just propel him further up the ranks of Division B.
Yeah, very, very patiently done there by RDU at the end. He does square up that series, and now suddenly the pressure is going to be feeling very much back on Zhym at this point, because he would have felt, I think, pretty comfortable in the position that he was in, especially when he saw the quality of his starting hand in that Highlander Hunter matchup, when he had Zephyrus 2-drop and then just all the best 3-mana options in his deck for dealing with Demon Hunter. He had Frozen Shadow Weaver, he had Desert Spear, and he had Dwarven Sharpshooter hero power, which is incredibly good in the matchup as well for like Satyr Overseer coming down or whatever. And that really felt like it probably should have been a win from Zim's perspective. And now he has to go back to the well. But this is the matchup, Raven. This is why we think most people are bringing Highlander Hunter this week, is specifically for this matchup against the new terror of the metagame, the Priest.
Yep, and Zhym gets a golden star from me, Soto, because he is running Nagrand Slam. And although I talk about this every week, there it is. Versus Priest, it is pretty good, honestly, because it's just another level of burst damage that if you're trying to set up that kind of just ending the game around turns 9 and 10, just, you know, that rough area which Hunter often does get to, then Nagrand Slam is pretty good. It's not often Priest has like a wide board or anything, so Nagrand Slam is a nice follow-up for just doing a lot of damage. And one thing I found a lot of success in, and happened a kind of weird amount of times for me, is the old like Alex Straza turn, then they Galakroned it, and then you just Nagrand Slam them for 12, which is a pretty good response. It plays out though. Zhym going for the early Zephyrus into the wild growth, and again with that Boom Pistol Bully, see him at Nagrand Slam. Just want to get to those late game turns.
I think RDU weirdly considered coining out his additional 1-drop, the Reliquary of Souls, so that he could deal with Fairy Dragons probably first and foremost, but also, you know, Zephyrus and other minions that can come down on the board. Chose not to. Goes Coin Lazul here as well, and he's just going to match the ramp.
This is exactly what I talked about earlier.
Love it.
But it's just funny, your opponent's used a Zephyrus, you've used, you know, your card. Oh, yeah, okay, let's keep it all even. They're even both 3/2s.
Oh, that's a huge draw as well. The Fate Weaver. Imagine only ramping once. RDU's going to ramp twice. He's going to discount this whole hand with a Fate Weaver, but it's going to take him some time, because that Boom Pistol Bully slows down his curve, but the time rip off the top.
I think Zim's upset with that one.
Hearthstone Lightning Round, Raven. These players are getting on with it. This isn't the Europe I know.
Good! We have to get RDU to teach all the other European players how to play Priest. Fast. But that time rip was huge, though. It wasn't only that it killed the Boom Pistol, it gave RDU something pretty powerful to do and stopped Zhym potentially pushing even more, because Zhym should have, in most worlds, been able to hit RDU for 5 this turn, and suddenly he didn't, and that actually opens up a huge gap. Zhym, though, does have Siamat, Alex Straza, and that Grand Slam right now, though, so he is getting there and just having just all of the power cards outside of Bran to end this game.
Right. So is this a renew first kind of turn? Could also be a Thought Steal first kind of turn. Is it not a Fate Weaver turn?
Well, I think he wants the lifesteal.
He wants the lifesteal on that first? Okay, sure. So I was considering Thought Steal first into Fate Weaver to discount the Thought Stolen cards, and then you still get to play the Reliquary of Souls afterwards alongside the Fate Weaver for 0. But sure,
I will say,
2/4 lifesteal, seems fine.
one thing to know as well is RDU got the information that Zhym's hand is pretty expensive, and also a lot of Hunter cards are pretty cheap, so maybe just having the cheaper Thought Steal and get you what you expect to be relatively cheap cards means that you don't need the reduction that much. Like, I think that play of Fate Weaver in post Thought Steal is way stronger, say, in the mirror or against Warlock.
I'd still argue that it's just good if it's efficient to do it that way. Especially, like, I'm sure RDU has decided that this board is the exact board he wanted against exactly this scenario, because he saw the Siamat earlier when he played the Madame Nazul. He was offered Siamat, the Wild Growth, and something else, I believe, the Nagran Slam. So he knows this Siamat is in hand, I believe. So he should have planned for it and known that it would come down to challenges 3/6 in this scenario.
You are too late. His return is nigh.
Shadow Madness pretty solid here. To clean up. Means now if Zhym wants to just play one new big minion, then he's in trouble, because he knows that Galakrond has been drawn, he knows that it's been invoked twice, so he knows it will clear up 2 big minions off the board.
You could double trade and play the Fairy Dragon here. Well, double trade, sorry. You could trade the 1/3 and the Rotnest Drake and play Fairy Dragon. Right. If he wants to dodge this Galakrond. But also,
sure he does.
The great thing here, though, is if Galakrond comes down, then Zhym just plays Alex. He might even, to a certain extent, welcome Galakrond this turn.
Right.
And this is one of those problems, and why the matchup can be really rough, is that, well, yeah, RDU drew removal. He's drawn some decent cards.
Hello?
But Hunter just keeps drawing just beefy beasts and dragons consistently, which means that you need removal every single turn for some pretty big minions.
Just Varanus Desert Spear combination?
I do swear that Thought Steal draws combo cards, right? Yeah, I feel like the 2 cards you get always work together very well.
Okay, Zhym does keep one of the big ones, and as you said, he can just load up again with Dragon Queen Alex Straza.
Even if this is answered, boom, 12 damage to that Grand Slam.
Ah, not high pressure.
This timeline.
This Varanus now can be used alongside the Desert Spear to clear up a good chunk of this, and he undercommits as well.
Funnily enough, by holding the dragon, it means that if this 4/5 is cleared, the Varanus is susceptible to Nagran Slam attack.
Sure.
Which I'm sure Zhym isn't considering the Varanus.
I was going to say, you make it sound like that's some master stroke.
No, it's just a thing that will happen, that's all.
Yeah. Don't you want to renew here for Breath of the Infinite? No? Okay.
I'd be willing to get more value out of the heal side of Renew, because he is Galakrond now and he's against Hunter, this damage is a little bit more scary.
Sure.
Time is running out.
Mind Vision just looks fine here. I don't think outside of Zigzor there's great silence targets, and honestly, you normally end up stealing Zigzor anyway, unless it's traded off that turn, so... Oh, here. I am ready. It's so good. Did you see all that damage, Saul?
I did. I sure did.
It's great. And there's also just the problem of, well, how do you kill 4 3/5s in a turn? I wouldn't even mind Zhym too much playing this Evasive Worm, although it does deactivate his Corrosive Breath, which is, will make him miss out on some damage as well, so there are reasons to hold on to it. One good thing going for RDU, though, is he has seen most of Zhym's power cards. There's just exactly Bran left. It's like, the big boys, so to speak. Zephyrus has been played, Alex Strauss has been played, Night Grand Slam has been played, Tiamat's been played. He's getting close to crossing the line here.
Pretty big whiffs, really, from the Veil Weaver, but he is at least able to deal with a good chunk of this board state.
And honestly, Shield of Galakron Grave Ruin, well, there's not much Hunter can do about that. So that's going to be some wall to get through. If you have a Taunt and Grave Ruin, it's going to be pretty good versus Hunter a lot of the time. Oh, there he is. Final piece of the puzzle.
Now 3, 6, 9, 17.
I'm surprised he's not going to preload instead of and save Bran. Press Hero Power as well.
Right. So much damage right now, though.
It is. It is. And you've seen a lot of cards. You know, all 3 of RDU's cards are generated randomly, which means there isn't the consistency of, well, he's not played Shadow Word Death yet, and so on, right? Because they're just random.
Yeah, there's
Maybe
only one real card in hand, but there's still two Shadow Word Deaths, 1 Time Rip, and the Soul Mirror left remaining that can clear this up. But again, it is so much just obnoxious damage at this point.
And I like saving the Worm now.
The Death's pretty huge, because it fits in with Shield and Grave Rune this turn.
I will act as your scapegoat.
Another taunt as well. So now slowly RDU's just looking for heal. Does have Evasive Worm to punch through 1.
Yeah, I like RDU not taking the damage on the previous turn. Just because then that puts him on an even tighter clock with the hero power. He just kind of had to bet that the damage couldn't get through to his face this turn. He gets the bad news that unfortunately it can. In fact, a ton of damage can get through to his face this turn.
And look at the difference between Scavengers. That Zigzor would have killed off the Shield of Galakron then.
Yeah, that's a good point.
How about a new eye?
Kind of weird, but it's worth doing.
Yeah, agreed. Accelerates the clock by so much that it just feels very worth it.
Big issue, though, is RDU is not on 2 health, which means if he can taunt up and there's no way to punch through it, again, he's seeing Corrosive Breath. There is a kill command in Zhym's list, so there is still draws that could get him there. But generally, he's seen almost everything that can just kill him from hand right now.
Okay, that 1-drop is pretty clutch. That 1-drop is clutch because he now has 2 Apotheosis draw live in his deck that he can just pick out and play on a minion. Because that was the problem here, is that the swing never really happened. But anyway, Stormhammer off the top
mind.
for Zhym is going to make that all a formality. But that was actually a really important one drop, which is why I really liked the Thought Steal there over the Hero Powers. I think he was more likely to get a one drop from his opponent's deck, and that felt pretty important to me that turn for exactly that reason.
Yeah, but congratulations to Zhym. Now we've seen 2 players play so far today that have had must-win matches of Hearthstone, and so far they've both won, with Boston and Zhym now grabbing the wins they needed, which means everything's just getting ever so closer, because what you've got to remember is not only have Boston and Zhym won their games, their opponents lost, which then just crushes them all closer together in that Division B and makes it just progressively spicier as time goes on. Honestly, I'm almost afraid to turn up for the last week of Round Robin Sol because it's going to be intense. I don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, we went through this last year where it really was in Europe, I think in particular, just all the way down to the wire with, so many emotional endings in either division and, things being decided at the very last moment, particularly in the scenario with Orange and Swids, which went all the way down to the absolute wire last season. But now we are looking like Europe is going to find itself back in that spot once again, pushing that high drama as we get towards the end of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be intense. There isn't that many more matches left for these players. And just a reminder, in Division B, whoever is in the bottom 2 spots is gone. Relegation automatic. Done and dusted. Better luck next time. So a lot to play for all these players here, especially those in Division B. But we do have some Division A matches coming up after the break. We're going to be kicking off with Silvername versus Bunny Hopper after this break. We're going to go to a break. We'll be right back in just a little bit to carry on with the day. 2 more matches left, guys. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.